All right, so we're picking up right where we left off in Major Kwamu, right?
Yes.
A couple more thoughts on the previous question, which, in case you're just tuning into this part, because I've split it together poorly, is how he experienced Martin Luther King Day and civil rights and basically African History Month as an American citizen. He talked about how it could really benefit Cameroon and other countries to have holidays that were more inclusive of everybody. And he wanted to add to that.
Yes. So while Black History Month, I think is a great idea. I do have one issue with it, which is another issue I have with the way we also teach history in at least in Cameroon and in many African countries. So my issue with Black History Month is that it seems to be restricted only to the last 400 years. It's almost exclusively, entirely about slavery and the civil rights. Same thing I have with African history, when the way we learn in Cameroon is almost exclusively about slavery and colonization. You know, what we forget to know is that before all of that, there was African history, there were empires, there were states, there were other things that were done, there were kingdoms, that are also worth being studied in history. In Black history, in African history, it's not wise to only study about the grievance part of it, about persecution, about everything that was done wrong, about all the gripes and complaints we have. We also have to study our history beyond just the last 400 years. Cameroon history the same way. For example, I was in a class once in college with a guy from Kenya, and one guy was from India, and they were asked to present a country of their countries, and both of them they started their briefs with the Kenyan guy. Of course, he started his brief to say Kenya was colonized by the British. The guy from India also started with India was colonized by the British, and I was like, what? India's history is way much longer and more
Oh, yeah.
extensive.
Yeah,
Yeah, than
what's it?
British
The Indus
colonization.
Valley is one of the fertile crescents of the world.
Yes, absolutely. So it's Kenya's history. Kenya, they had Swahili kingdoms all along the Kenya coast, that have been around for about at least the last 1,000 years. So we have to get away from this idea of just, history starting with slavery and colonization and civil rights movement and all that.
That's really interesting because the Nile River Valley, the Tigris and Euphrates, and the Indus River are considered the three cradles of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So clearly, your point is like history just doesn't start when the British and the whites show up.
No, absolutely not.
Now, I will say that Americans' history with Africans starts in the 1600s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can understand it there, but I do understand your perspective of that. If you're going to talk about Black history, you have to talk about the whole spectrum of Black history.
Yes, absolutely.
So now we're
But
going to get in.
for some people, understand they want, which I hate to get political, but it looks like some people want to. It's one of those cases where the political right and the political left, they meet in the middle. For the political, I guess for the political right, they want to say, yeah, you have no history without us. And for the political left, they want to say, yeah, this is the only history to talk about because we need grievance to keep profiting from. That's the only thing that makes us happy, or that's the only thing we can profit from.
Yeah, let's not get
Which
into
is
the whole political realm because
completely wrong.
I generally distrust
For
all
both
politicians.
sides, yeah.
I generally distrust all politicians.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel they have any. That's a soapbox. We won't go there.
Yeah.
So now let's get to what your experience in the United States. I'll be very blunt in my questioning, so I apologize for anybody who's watching if that offends you. I'm a historian. You speak blunt, you speak facts.
Absolutely.
How have you experienced or not experienced racism in your life since you've been in the United States? Let's face it, you went to Georgia. It's not had the best history with Black people.
So, have I experienced direct racism? Now, I've met a lot of people who I would say are jerks, or for lack of a better term. I don't. If you need to blip out the words, that's fine. Who are jerks or a-holes, if you put it that way. Many of them have come in all shades and sizes, genders, you name it. As far as directly, I want to say it's a good thing I've not experienced it directly now. Since I got on social media, that is a different story. That I've experienced it a lot on social media. I mean, the worst possible way. from being called the N-word to monkey and all kinds of things. But I must say that's with a very, very, very tiny, tiny minority of people. And they could have been anyone, who knows who they were. Because, of course, many of them are hiding behind
Keyboard warriors.
anonymous profiles and different things.
Yeah,
The
keyboard
vast
warriors,
of
yeah.
99%, 99.9% of people follow me on social media, and they are of all backgrounds and different things, Yeah, we interact respectfully. Even those who disagree with some of what I say, the conversation is still respectful. Sometimes we call each other names, a few times, but nothing to that level, But the most direct forms of racism experience has been from anonymous profiles on social media.
That's really interesting that you haven't experienced in your daily life. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are various minorities, and they've always said that there's always been it may not be direct, but there's been sometimes a subtle undertone of racism on how they were treated. Has that been possibly your experience then?
Maybe it's possible. It is possible. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, that racism or prejudice doesn't exist. It probably does out there. It definitely, absolutely does. I know people who have experienced it or who have said that they've experienced it. Absolutely. It may have been done to me and I've not recognized it. Maybe that's the case. I just think people will treat you the way you treat them. I've experienced I've experienced some unfair and harsh treatment from some people before. Sometimes of different it's been from from people of different races, been from Caucasians, maybe from some from Caucasians, some from blacks. Was it racism? I don't know. There's no way to tell,
Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm not trying to pry. I'm just trying to ask
No, fair question. Absolutely. Somebody from the outside may look at it and think that and say, hey, that's whatever that person did to you, that is some form of racism.
Because I'm also working on another video on one of my guy I actually consider an amazing individual, but you're part of my feature for Black History Month because it's interesting to hear about your experience as a true African American experiencing Black history.
Now, I do have friends I've come from who have described, being faced with direct forms of racism. I have some friends who I came from to the United States from Cameroon with.
Now, on the aspect of the United States, and you being in the military, you've probably seen a fair bit of it. What's been your favorite area geographically of the United States, or perhaps your favorite state/training station? I know of Fort Benning because no one loves their basic site.
No, absolutely not. I would say Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Really? Why is that? I mean, there's a lot of history there. Revolutionary War, the Civil War. There's a lot of history there.
Lots of history is by the sea. The housing was affordable. That's one thing, Yeah. But I love the history. It was by the sea where we lived. It was close to Charleston. We could, and it was close to Georgia, so we could go back and forth. And Fort Jackson was just an all-around nice post to be in. Granted, I was only there for about 6 months, but yeah, I loved every second of it.
Now, you mentioned we. I should mention that if any ladies are out there, I'm sorry, but the major is taken. Sorry to break any heart.
Nah, it's okay.
Do you mind discussing how you met your spouse?
Yes, so she's from Texas. So we actually met, it had to do with a film post. I go online. I love movies like crazy, especially historical movies. And there was a post I saw about the movie and I commented, she commented, I commented back. And
are you serious? You met via Facebook? Comment.
Yeah. And
wow, that's not an endorsement for Facebook.
Funnily enough, I don't remember. I don't even remember. We don't even remember what movie it was. Yeah.
Wow. That is the first time I've ever heard. And somebody said, "Oh, we met through Facebook comments."
Yeah.
So now, how did you, as you moved around the United States and experienced the different histories in it and things of that nature, how did you become more in tune to say, you know what, I want to start sharing my historical love and knowledge?
Yeah. It was a friend of mine, Harry. We were in Cameroon together. He's in the United States now. Actually, he lives all over the world because his job allows him to travel all over the place. All he needs is a laptop. But yeah, he's based in the US but travels all over the planet. He loves history too. So he knew about TikTok way before I do, sometime last year. So he would always send me these clips from TikTok of different things you'll discover. And I would discuss it. Like, hey, this is interesting. I'll discuss the merits of each one. So one time he asked me, hey, why don't I do one and send to him, so he could see. So I did one, sent to him. It was meant for just him. I wasn't very familiar with TikTok at the time. So, but it turned out, of course, he wasn't the only one who saw it. One or two other people saw it and commented, and they asked for a response. So I responded, made another one, and a whole bunch of other people commented. And so okay, maybe I should do a few more. And I did a few more. And next thing people started watching and asking me, hey, can you do a video on this or can you do a video on that? So okay, I'll give it a shot. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I would like to do, as many videos as I would like, but I try to do as many as I can within the week.
And for any lawyers who might be seeing this or governments who are listening in, anything that the major and I say is our opinions and our opinions only, and in no way, shape, or form is it the opinion of the Department of Defense or any of its subsidiaries, or is an endorsement by the Department of Defense or any of its subsidiaries. It is just us talking.
Yeah.
Just us. We got it. I know it sounds silly, but I actually had to put that in a video on the TikTok just to make sure I was legally covered. So that they can't say, oh, the Air Force endorsed this. No, some idiot in the Air Force endorsed it.
Yeah.
So just so you know, this will be going on YouTube, and I will put your TikTok handle and stuff in the comments. So anybody who wants to go watch them, I think you're up to what 30,000 followers now, or is it more than that?
128,000.
Okay, so just a few more than me, my measly 2,700. Pardon me. So what has been your favorite part since being in the United States about being here? And I know that's going to be a bit of an odd question, but what I'm looking for is like, have you enjoyed, the food the most? Have you enjoyed being accessible to the history the most? I mean, what's been your favorite aspect of being in the United States?
Just the ease of traveling. You can just get up and go anywhere you want, frankly. As long as your job allows it, as long as you don't have to work, you can just get up any day and travel anywhere. During my days as a teacher, when we had summer holidays, nothing better to do, I'll just sit around, watch. Maybe I'm watching the History Channel and I'll see MacArthur will come up and say, hey, it'll be good to go to MacArthur's museum in Arkansas. And I'll just get up and just drive for 8 hours to Arkansas, check out the museum, check in the hotel, check out the museum, check out the following, and drive back to Georgia. It's just so easy to travel. I've been to Grand Canyon several times. When my parents visited me from Cameroon, that was the first place I took them. So I think it's the most amazing place. At least of all the places I've been to, I think it's the most amazing sight.
I agree.
That anyone can have the joy of seeing.
I agree with you, but I also humbly disagree with you because you've never seen Mount Rainier.
No, I've not.
Get up to JBLM, and if you get up here, I'll take you to the spot in JBLM that gives you one of the best views of the mountain, and it's one of those that I still look at it every day and just think two things. One, that is an amazing view, and two, if that thing blows up, I'm dead.
Oh no, I hope it doesn't. Yeah,
it's kind of the running joke in Washington State. If Rainier goes, well. But no, that's interesting, that the ability to just get up and travel. I mean, how about this? After Black History got established, and really 1997, we talked about this off camera, there's kind of been a very small second civil rights movement in the United States, not just centralized around Black Americans, but really all American minorities. It's part of that, I don't know if a better way to put this, but that woke culture of just being aware. I don't really consider it woke. I just consider it more of like you're more historically aware of the struggles of a certain minority.
Oh yeah.
Because the Black minorities are not going to have the same struggles as necessarily the
Native American,
Asian minorities.
Yeah.
They're not going to be the same kind of struggles. I mean, even you go back to the Civil War, you have Irish minorities that were ostracized. You have Jewish minorities that were ostracized. So as you've been living in the United States, this whole movement has slowly been going on to where we have now, where I'm actually quite pleased that people can very openly talk about these issues without becoming absolutely offended.
Mhm.
I think personally, open discourse is the best way to education.
Oh yeah.
The old Socratic method, et cetera, et cetera. So how have you seen that progress, and how's that impacted you?
He hasn't. I've always had the same opinion that history is history. It's important to talk about history, no matter how hard or how difficult it may be. That's my opinion. I've made at least 2 TikTok videos about that. Um, I think it's great. People are being honest. I mean, you have to be honest with history. You cannot absolutely sugarcoat history, no matter how, no matter how unpleasant or how uncomfortable it is. Like, for
Hold
example,
that thought. My
yeah,
light just went off because I haven't moved. So
yeah.
my office has light timers, and they shut off if you don't detect movement for 15 minutes.
Okay.
So sorry, you were saying history should never be censored.
Yes, it should not be censored. It should not be silenced. You cannot avoid talking about real history because you don't want to offend people. For example, what we talked about, yes, the issue of slavery. A lot of times, many people think that okay, many people do not want to talk about Africa's role in slavery, but that is not history. If you avoid it, you cannot talk about slavery without talking about the role of not all, but some Africans who willingly took part in slavery. You cannot silence that. On the other hand, you cannot do history without talking about the excessive brutality, that many Europeans had in slavery, or talk about the 400 years of
Yeah,
slavery in America. That, yeah, even though some Africans may have partaken in slavery and sold slaves to America, what about the 400 years the slaves were in America, were being sold on Sundays, were being separated from their families? We cannot avoid that either. Or the 100 years of Jim Crow that followed, or some of the issues that go on now, in the few, well, I'm not sure the words, or the cases that are currently going on now with police brutality, with the few cases of, or the minority of police officers who are, who are not doing what they are supposed to be doing in the right way.
and unfortunately, it's a very common thing again, a lack of a better way to say it's mob mentality to take over. They see one police officer's action, and my wife and I are the same opinion on this, where it's like it needs to be easier to get rid of the bad police officers.
Yes, exactly.
And right now it's not. And then you find out, well, this guy who killed this 12-year-old kid, he's had multiple complaints his entire career. Then why the hell was he still a police officer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like mhm. I had a conversation with a police officer when I was based in Fort Sam Houston, and he was all about, hey, yeah, we need to, that, hey, yeah, law enforcement needs to be strong and everything. And he was surprised that I agreed with him. I said, yes, law enforcement has to be, law enforcement has, the law has to be enforced. If somebody goes out there to a protest, to a Black Lives Matter protest, and burns and throws a Molotov cocktail in a building, he needs to be arrested and prosecuted. Much like a police officer who uses excessive force unnecessarily and kills somebody, he also needs to be arrested and prosecuted, much like the BLM protester who firebombs a building. That's all law enforcement. It has to be all, it cannot be selective.
So we're coming close to the end of the time here that I had for questions. You've been extremely eloquent in all your points, but there's a few questions I want to get asked, and got a couple serious ones and then some really fun ones at the very end, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first serious one, what part of history do you feel is absolutely either underappreciated or is completely misunderstood?
Hmm. Maybe I'm being biased, but I would say African history before colonization and before slavery and all that is completely underappreciated, completely misunderstood. I do write books. The last book I wrote was actually set in 13th century Ethiopia. Yeah, because I'm trying to bring out history before, African history before the African history that we study in
For the
schools.
whites, just say it. African
Yeah,
history
not,
before
not just
white.
for that, but even for Africans or people of African descent. Many of us do not know that. Like I said, even in African schools, when my school in Cameroon, most of the history we studied as African history started with colonization. We talked very little about African history before colonization. Meanwhile, there's a there's a lot of information on African history before colonization. It's possible many African countries are beginning to catch up on that, but I've spoken to a lot of kids I've come across who, who've had their education in Africa. Many of them, all they know is, hey, Britain colonized Cameroon or Britain colonized Nigeria, and then everything moved on from there. That's all. Yeah.
Now, what part of your experience in America do you feel has been the most impactful since you've been here? I mean, you've been here arguably outside of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, some of the greatest culturally shifting events in American history. 9/11, the War on Terror, things like that. So, as you watch that history unfold, what has been the most impactful to you personally?
I would say maybe it's a combination of things. 9/11 was a big one. That was a big shock to everybody. I was in America at the time. I was not a citizen yet, but of course I lived here, and yeah, that was a big deal at the time. I saw how the country shifted. For the first time, even though I'd only been in America for about 3 or 4 years at the time, for the first one I was a little bit. For the first time, I felt some fear just speaking, at least for those few weeks, because I was in Georgia at the time. I was in Georgia State University, and there was so much anti-immigrant feeling in the air going around. And for a while, I realized that I was afraid to speak in public. you know,
Interesting.
yes, but
Because I'm guessing you have an accent.
yes, exactly, exactly. I just didn't want to. There was just so much tension. But a few weeks after that, I was in class, and one of the students, he was a white guy, of course, like the majority of people in the class, and he got up and he said, he was speaking to his neighbor. His neighbor was Arab, and he was speaking to his neighbor, and his neighbor, who was Arabic American, expressed the same fear. And this guy said he dares someone to attack or accuse his neighbor of anything in front of him, and that guy will have the hell, was it? I think he said hell or high water come down on him. And that was very encouraging, and the rest of the class actually cheered him on. I was like, okay, so maybe I should not be as afraid as I'm thinking. Maybe despite everything going on, maybe people are still decent enough to recognize that, yes, there are terrorists, and then there are just people trying to live their lives. Those hijackers do not represent every foreigner or every person of Arab descent or immigrant. Those terrorists do not represent everyone.
Now, before we get to the fun questions, I want you to talk a little bit about your TikTok and how people can find you on TikTok. Are you on YouTube, wherever else they can find you? So hopefully all the, who knows how many people will see it, will be able to find you. So how can they find you on what social media platforms?
So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, but most of what I do is on TikTok, and I have the same handle on all of them, and it is at History Fellow, just at History Fellow. And now, one thing
I'll put a link to all his stuff in the description below.
And just to be clear, a lot of times people have mistaken History Fellow to mean like I'm a fellow of history, like I have a history degree. No, I do not. The reason I use that name is because that was my nickname in secondary school. People used to call me the fellow. Hey, that's the fellow who talks about history. That's a fellow who knows a lot about history. And so people just say, hey, that's History Fellow. So it's not because I'm a fellow of or it's not because I am an academic fellow of history. No, I do not have a history degree yet.
All right. So now we're going to go on to the fun questions. And I actually wrote these down, so you have to forgive me. All right. Just for fun, what are your 3 favorite non-history movies and 3 favorite history movies?
Non-history movies. Man, my favorite movies all have to do with history. But okay, I will start with my 3 favorite history movies.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be Legends of the Fall, which is my favorite movie of all time. I don't mean to sound cheesy about this. I love the sound of music. There's a lot of history to the sound of music.
I actually met the last surviving child of Maria and Gregor von Trapp one day.
Oh, really? The little girl. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were actually at the Von Trapp Family Lodge in Stowe, Vermont, which you can still go to. And coincidentally, my youngest was a wee babe. She was only about 6, 8 months old.
Oh,
And the grandson came over and introduced himself. And then the father came over and introduced himself. And he's the last child of Maria and Gregor von Trapp.
I'm hoping to sometime visit it. My wife and I have been talking to sometime go to the lodge in Vermont.
Oh, you definitely should.
Yes.
And those hills are alive.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to
Or if
mention
possible, even to Salzburg, you
Ben and
know.
Jerry's is just down the road.
Oh, wow.
So even more of a reason to go.
Yeah.
All right. So you got your first two. What's your third favorite movie?
Ah,
History movie.
it has to be Forrest Gump.
Interesting. All right.
Yes.
What about your non-history movies, like your Star Wars?
Non-history, yeah, non-history movies. Wow, I have to go with Tombstone is one.
But Tombstone's a history movie.
Well, yeah, Tombstone is a history movie.
But
Oh
these are
man.
movies like they're more like guilty pleasures, like Goonies or Star Wars or Star Trek, things like that.
Yes. Huh. Okay, I have to think of on this. Almost every movie I like in my collection. Okay, I'll give you one. The Professional with them, Jean Reno and Natalie
Oh,
Portman. Yeah, I love that movie.
all right.
I love The Parent Trap.
Really, the
Yes.
original or the Lindsay Lohan version?
No, this is one of the few cases why I love the remake. The original is way too long for me, and it's not quite as well cut up like the um remake. Yeah.
Okay.
And Boys in the Hood, I love Boys in the Hood. And since I think I was about 10 years old when, maybe 10 or 12 years to 12 years old when I first watched it.
Okay, I got to ask. That means you're in Cameroon. Did you see it in your native tongue or did you see it in English?
No, I saw it in English. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So now, three favorite people to follow on TikTok and YouTube. Your three favorite people to follow on TikTok and YouTube. Your three favorite people to
Okay.
follow on TikTok and YouTube.
One guy is actually a guy named the Wandering Historian. Yeah. Have one guy. He does a lot of amazing history. Yes.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Really, who would you say are your three favorite? They don't have to be history related, but three favorite people you on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Just they can be across any of the platforms.
Yeah. Instagram, I'm hopefully a lot of people on Instagram. I'm barely on Instagram. But on TikTok, there's a guy, he's a history teacher. He goes by Mr. K. He teaches AP history. I'm not even sure what state it is in, but he does a lot of stuff. Maybe it reminds me of my days as a teacher. So I like to go to his page and watch his stuff. I think his handle is at Mr. K. Mr. full stop then K. On YouTube, I follow certain channels. I do not remember them off the top of my head, but one of them I believe it's called the Geography Channel. He just does a lot of geography all over the world. There's another guy who does a lot of documentaries in Africa. He goes to a lot of, he's a Nigerian guy. He goes to a lot of hotspots all over Africa, places that a lot of people wouldn't even dare to go to. And he goes there and just films the people, see how they are living and, what conditions are like in those areas.
Okay. We only got a few minutes left, but the last question I want to ask before the last parting shots is, what is one book you think everybody should read?
Oh, trying to see the best books I've read.
No, you only get one. One book you think everybody should read.
Can I name my book? No, I can't. I'm not.
Do send me the information. If we can buy your book, send me the information so I can put a link to it.
Okay. All right. Book I read lately that I really liked. I read so many books, but there is
one book you think everybody should read once in their life.
There's a book called On the Edge of the World. Really enjoyed it. It's a collection of adventurers, 10 of several I think it's 10 adventurers who, and explorers who define modern history. It's called On the Edge of the World. I believe that's the title. I tremendously enjoyed it. one of the things I liked about it was I learned for the first time. I knew everybody, all the adventurers. He had the classic guys, David Livingstone, Columbus, Magellan. But there was a guy that I learned about, Rabah Basuman. He's a Chinese traveler who traveled to Europe around the same time as Marco Polo, and his journey was actually extensive. He wrote about it. So while Marco Polo was traveling to Europe, this guy was traveling from China. I'm sorry, while Marco Polo was traveling to China, this guy was traveling from China to Europe, and he actually met several European monarchs and even the Pope. He actually met King Edward, I believe it was King Edward the First. And just to put it in context, that is the guy who fought and defeated William Wallace, who many of us know as Braveheart.
Yeah, Edward Longshanks.
Yeah, Edward Longshanks, absolutely. Yes. Just to put it in bed. Yeah, it was just so fascinating learning about that guy. And also to learn that, okay, this was in the sometime around I believe this was in the 13th century, and he was a Chinese Christian. I'm not endorsing Christianity or saying Christianity is good or bad or anything. I'm just saying for that time in China, it was a rarity, and he was a Christian monk, and he was actually charged and commissioned by the Mongols to take on that journey to Europe and bring information back to the Mongols so that the Mongols could learn more about what the other side of the world was like.
All right. We only have 7 minutes left before this session forces me to stop. What is your final parting thought that you want to say to everybody?
What I would say is, hey, history is amazing. Do not be afraid of talking about history. I've had 2 TikTok videos on this where people have accused me of one thing or another. Say, hey, you shouldn't talk about this, or how dare you talk about this? And I always say, hey, if you're uncomfortable with history, then maybe you like fairy tales. Then you should stick to watching Walt Disney movies. Do not do history if you're uncomfortable with any aspect of history. History is our, we have to learn from the past to make a better tomorrow. I know that's a cliche, but history is our future. History makes our present. History makes our future. We need to bring history back. A lot of kids these days are losing interest in history. But history, I think, is the most fascinating subject, more fascinating than any subject being taught anywhere, at least in my opinion. So live history, love it, encourage it, spread it.
I think that's great news and great information. Sorry, great information, not great news. So that we're about at time. I can't thank you enough, Major Kwamu. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
Yeah, that's right. Kwamu, yep.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I mean, we've only recently met. If you haven't followed him on TikTok, you really need to go to TikTok right now and find him. He's got a great little logo. Again, I'll post all this stuff in the descriptions. Thank you so much. Your perspective on, an African-American for Black History Month is really kind of interesting. It's a beautiful take. And hopefully we get to talk more. And if you ever get out to JBLM, let me know. I'll happily take you around, show you the really neat stuff around this history area. And you can even hold the 105 casing.
Yeah. No, that's Saber. That's what I want to.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, that's all we have here. In case you haven't figured it out yet, this is episode 2 of Worldwide Wanderings. And Major Kwamu has been my special guest here. Thank you again. And with that, I hope everyone continues to have happy wanderings.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on.
Today's sponsor is Kimages, a veteran-owned custom gift-making and photoshopping services. I can tell you from experience that Kimages is some of the best quality for custom gifts and photoshopping I've ever seen. Just take a look at this as I scroll through their Facebook page. You can see that your face can be in almost anything, movie poster, or even made into a 3-dimensional doll. So for your next gift, retirement, or just a way to say thank you for your service, go to Kimages. Links for their Facebook page are in the description below.